The Phoenix Convention Center was packed to the brim with more than 3,000 people. The energy in the room was electric heavy with anticipation. Every seat was taken and the air carried a quiet tension, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for history to unfold. Cameras clicked non-stop. Flashes lit up the stage. Reporters whispered into their microphones, their voices low but urgent, feeding the story to millions already watching from home. At the very center of it all stood two of America's most powerful men, President Donald Trump and former President Barack Obama. This wasn't just another political forum. This wasn't just another televised debate. No, this was a collision of two visions of America, and everyone in that room knew it. Supporters, critics, journalists, and lawmakers all leaned forward in their seats. Every single person could feel it. Something unforgettable was about to happen. And then the room fell silent. The stage was set. History was ready to be written. President Donald Trump leaned forward toward the microphone. His fingers tapped the desk softly, his eyes narrowed like a predator about to strike. And then he said it. "Sit down, boy." For one frozen second, the entire Phoenix Convention Center stopped breathing. The words hung heavy in the air, sharp and deliberate, slicing through the silence like a blade. Then the reaction erupted. Gasps rippled through the audience. A pastor in the front row slowly shook his head in disbelief. A college student in the back whispered, "Did he just say that?" while pulling out his phone to record the moment. Cameras from CNN and Fox News instantly zoomed in on Barack Obama's face. Every network wanted that shot, the moment America would remember. Some of Trump's supporters laughed nervously, unsure if clapping was appropriate. Others glanced around confused, waiting to see what would happen next. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the room, jaws clenched, hands balled into fists. You could feel the tension crackling in the air. And at the center of it all, Obama remained completely still. The ripple of shock spread across the room like a wave crashing against the shore. Everyone heard the words, but no one seemed to know how to react. In the front row, a gray-haired pastor from Detroit slowly shook his head. His lips pressed tightly together. His eyes glistened with both anger and disappointment, as if the weight of history had just landed on his shoulders. A few rows back, a young college student in a navy hoodie quickly pulled out his phone. He whispered under his breath, his voice trembling. Did he just say that the live stream started instantly, thousands joining within seconds, hungry to witness the chaos unraveling in real time? Meanwhile, on the left side of the hall, a woman in her late 60s clutched her pearl rosary beads so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She closed her eyes, her lips moving in silent prayer, trying desperately to steady her heartbeat. All around, people were whispering, gasping, shaking their heads, while others sat frozen still, processing what they had just heard. It wasn't just a word. It wasn't just an insult. It was a line drawn in the sand, and everyone in that room knew it. Barack Obama sat perfectly still. No anger, no shouting, no rush to defend himself. Instead, he straightened his jacket slowly, his fingers deliberate and controlled, like every small gesture carried weight. Then, without a word, he lifted his glass of water and took a slow, measured sip. The sound of the ice shifting inside the glass seemed louder than the microphones. And that silence, it was deafening. 3,000 people inside the Phoenix Convention Center, lawmakers, journalists, supporters, critics, and yet in that moment it felt as though no one dared to breathe. Some leaned forward on the edge of their seats. Others froze completely, waiting, wondering, questioning how Obama would respond. But Obama didn't speak. Not yet. The more he waited, the more this tension grew, stretching the seconds into what felt like an eternity. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 6. 7. It felt endless. In the press gallery above, reporters stopped typing. Their fingers froze above the keyboards, eyes locked on the stage, afraid to miss a single detail. Cameras panned and zoomed rapidly, capturing every twitch, every blink, every breath. The entire nation was about to witness this moment live, raw, unfiltered. In the third row, a little boy no older than 12 tugged gently on his father's sleeve. His small voice broke the tension. "Daddy, why did he call him boy?" The father didn't look away from the stage. His jaw tightened, his voice low but steady as he whispered, "You'll understand when you're older." Across the hall, a young woman wiped away a single tear, her lips trembling as she whispered to herself, This is bigger than politics." The silence was so heavy, so thick, it felt as if the entire Phoenix Convention Center had been swallowed whole. Every second was louder than thunder. And at the center of it all, Obama remained still unshaken, calculating his next move. The silence was becoming unbearable. Seconds felt like minutes. All eyes were locked on the stage. President Donald Trump leaned forward with his jaw tight, his knuckles tapping the wooden table in a steady rhythm. The sound echoed through the microphones, sharp and impatient. Finally, he snapped. He leaned closer to the mic, his voice tinged with irritation. "What did I say something wrong?" The words weren't a genuine question. It was a challenge, a provocation. Some of his supporters chuckled nervously, their laughter thin and uneasy. Others glanced at each other, unsure if clapping, cheering, or staying silent was the right move. Across the room, tension tightened like a noose. Reporters hunched forward, their cameras locked on the two men, knowing they were seconds away from history. And Obama, he didn't move, he didn't blink. He simply tilted his head slightly and allowed the faintest, most deliberate smile to touch his lips. That calmness, that controlled silence. It spoke louder than any words could. For Trump, it was maddening. For the audience, it was mesmerizing. And for the nation, it was the moment the power in the room began to shift. The silence had stretched as far as it could go. Every camera, every reporter, every single person in the room leaned forward, waiting breathless. And then Obama finally moved. He leaned slightly toward the microphone. His eyes locked forward, calm but sharp. When he spoke, his voice was low, steady, and deliberate. Each word carrying the weight of decades. I've been called a lot of things in my life. A pause. His gaze never wavered. But respect has never been something I had to beg for. For a fraction of a second, there was silence, stunned, motionless silence. And then the room erupted. Thunderous applause shook the walls. People leapt to their feet, clapping so hard their palms stung. Some shouted, others whistled, their voices rising like a wave breaking against the shore. In the front row, a pastor raised his hand high and shouted, "Amen!" Cameras flashed wildly. Reporters scrambled to type. Microphones caught the roar of the crowd, a sound so powerful it drowned out everything else. At that moment, Obama had flipped the energy of the room. The power had shifted, and Trump was no longer in control. The roar of applause was still echoing when Obama raised his hand slightly, signaling the crowd to settle. Within seconds, the room quieted, thousands leaning in, eager for his next words. And then he delivered the line that would reverberate across America. Respect isn't demanded by a title. He paused, his voice steady, each syllable deliberate, letting the weight of the words sink in. It's earned by how you treat people. The effect was immediate and explosive. The audience erupted once again, louder than before. People rose to their feet, stomping, clapping, shouting with a force that made the walls tremble. Reporters abandoned their notes, scrambling to capture the moment live. On the far left side of the room, a young woman shouted, her voice cracking with emotion. "Say that again!" And she wasn't alone. Dozens more joined in, chanting, cheering, repeating the words as if they were a rallying cry. Respect is earned, respect is earned. Obama didn't look at Trump when he said it. He didn't need to, but everyone, including Trump, knew exactly where those words landed. At that moment, it was clear to everyone in the room Obama had seized control of the stage. Trump's face flushed red, his jaw tightened. You could almost see the frustration building. Suddenly, he leaned forward, gripping the microphone, his voice sharp and defensive. "Don't lecture me, I'm the president." The words cracked through the air like thunder, but instead of commanding authority, they sounded desperate. His supporters clapped weakly, trying to rally, but the energy wasn't the same. Obama didn't flinch. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even blink. He turned his head slowly, locking eyes with Trump, and replied in a calm, steady tone that cut deeper than any shout could exactly. "That's why every word you speak carries weight." And just like that, the entire room shifted. A wave of murmurs swept through the audience. Some gasped. Others nodded slowly, letting the meaning sink in. Reporters' fingers flew across keyboards' headlines, practically writing themselves in real time. Within minutes, clips of the exchange flooded social media. Twitter exploded. Hashtags trended instantly. Chad, every word matters. Had respect is earned for millions watching live. It was the moment when Obama's composure crushed Trump's force. And from that point on, the power in the room no longer belonged to the president. It started with a single clip, just 20 seconds long. But within minutes, it was everywhere. On Twitter, the hashtags #SitDownBoy and #StandUpWithMe skyrocketed to the #1 trending spots worldwide. Millions were tweeting, thousands were debating, and the numbers climbed by the second. Within just 3 hours, the original video of the exchange between Trump and Obama had surpassed 20 million views. Clips from every angle, phone recordings live, broadcast replays flooded people's timelines nonstop. TikTok users clipped Obama's powerful line, "Respect isn't demanded by a title, it's earned by how you treat people." Within an hour, that single soundbite had been remixed into over 300,000 videos, from motivational edits to political parodies. On Facebook, watch parties exploded. Thousands gathered in real time, leaving tens of thousands of comments per minute. Some praised Obama's composure. Others defended Trump fiercely. The digital battlefield was fierce, unrelenting, unstoppable. News outlets jumped in instantly. CNN's headline read, "Obama's words ignite a national reckoning." Meanwhile, Fox News countered with its own spin, "Trump faces backlash, supporters rally harder." By nightfall, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a political clash anymore. It was a cultural earthquake. By the next morning, every major news network in America had locked onto the confrontation. But the way they told the story couldn't have been more different. On CNN, the headline stretched across the screen in bold letters, "A masterclass in leadership." Clips of Obama's calm, deliberate words played on repeat. Analysts praised his poise, his composure, his ability to defend dignity without raising his voice. One commentator declared, "Obama reminded America what leadership is supposed to look like." Across the street, Fox News ran a completely different narrative. "Trump stands strong, refuses to back down." Hosts defended Trump passionately, framing his words as direct, unfiltered honesty. "The president doesn't play political games," one anchor said confidently. "He speaks his mind and his supporters respect that." But no matter which network people watched, the impact was undeniable. In living rooms, classrooms, coffee shops, and workplaces, Americans were seeing two completely different versions of the same event. One side framed Obama as the hero, the other framed Trump as the fighter, and the country, it was splitting right down the middle. By the end of the day, the confrontation between Trump and Obama had spilled out of the convention center and into every corner of America. In schools, students debated fiercely between classes, their voices overlapping in heated arguments. Some supported Trump's boldness, others defended Obama's composure. In churches, pastors addressed it from the pulpit, framing it as a question of morality and leadership. Congregations murmured in response, torn between loyalty and values. At coffee shops, strangers gathered around tables, leaning and whispering, arguing, scrolling through endless tweets and videos on their phones. One young mother sat with her daughter, holding her tiny hand as she whispered, "Sweetheart, this isn't just about politics." She paused, her voice soft but firm. "This is about dignity, about how we treat each other as human beings." Across the country, family dinners turned into battlefields. Friends stopped talking. Co-workers avoided eye contact. Social divides grew deeper with each passing hour. America wasn't just watching history unfold anymore. It was living inside it. Inside the West Wing, the atmosphere was suffocating. The confrontation at the Phoenix Convention Center had gone global. Every major network, every social platform, every headline. In the Oval Office, Donald Trump stood behind his massive, resolute desk, his face red, his jaw tight. Suddenly, he slammed his palm down on the desk, the sound echoing off the walls. "Enough," he barked. "This ends now." His senior advisors exchanged nervous glances. The air felt thick, heavy with tension. Trump pointed a finger at his communications director, his voice sharp and commanding. "Get Hannity, get Tucker, get everyone defending me." Within seconds, phones started ringing. Emails were firing off. The media war room went into overdrive. Orders flew fast. Push pro-Trump narratives. Flood social media with counterclips. Attack Obama's credibility. One aide whispered to another, "This isn't just about damage control anymore." The other nodded gravely. "It's survival." Outside the Oval Office, Secret Service agents stood watch. But inside, chaos was brewing. Trump wasn't just fighting Obama anymore. He was fighting America's perception of him. Across town, inside a quiet conference room, Barack Obama sat with his closest advisors. Unlike the chaos inside the White House, the atmosphere here was calm, focused, deliberate. Michelle Obama sat beside him, her expression soft but resolute. She finally broke the silence, her voice low but steady. "Kids are watching Barack," she whispered. "Tonight wasn't about politics. It was about dignity." Obama nodded slowly, his hands clasped in front of him. Around the table, his advisors exchanged knowing looks. They didn't need to fight the story. They didn't need to push hashtags or dominate headlines. They understood something Trump's team didn't. When a moment speaks for itself, you let it breathe. An aide scrolled through her phone watching the numbers climb 20 million views, 1.5 million retweets, thousands of comments praising Obama's composure. Another strategist leaned back and said softly, "We don't have to chase this. The story will carry itself." Obama leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. The weight of the night was heavy, but his calmness carried authority. He wasn't just protecting his image, he was protecting a principle. And deep down, he knew something critical. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a much bigger one. At Lincoln Middle School in Chicago, a history teacher paused the lesson and turned on the projector. The room fell silent as the video from the Phoenix Convention Center lit up the screen. Dozens of students leaned forward, eyes fixed watching the exact moment Trump said it's "sit down, boy." The words echoed through the classroom. In the third row, a 12-year-old boy named Malik raised his hand slowly, his voice hesitant but curious. "Miss Carter." "Why did the president call him that?" Miss Carter froze for a moment, her hand resting on the edge of her desk. She glanced at the video, then back at her students, their wide, innocent eyes searching for answers. She took a deep breath and spoke softly, because sometimes words carry history, and sometimes they carry hurt. The classroom stayed silent. Not a chair creaked, not a whisper escaped. Even the sound of the projector's fan felt louder than usual. Another student, Emily, whispered under her breath, "But he's the president. Isn't he supposed to set an example?" Miss Carter nodded gently, her voice low, almost breaking. "Yes, he is." And in that quiet moment, the children learned something bigger than politics. They learned how much power words can hold. Across the country, Sunday morning came with a different kind of sermon. Inside Mount Zion Baptist Church in Atlanta, Reverend James Whitaker stood at the pulpit holding his Bible, his voice carrying both pain and hope. Behind him, a massive screen replayed Obama's powerful words. "Respect isn't demanded by a title, it's earned by how you treat people." The congregation, over 800 people packed inside, sat in silence, hanging on every syllable. Some nodded slowly, others wiped away tears. Reverend Whitaker raised his hand and spoke with a deep, steady voice. "Brothers and sisters, this is bigger than politics. This is about dignity. It's about knowing that no one, no matter their skin color, no matter their title, is less than another in the eyes of God." A ripple of amen rolled through the church. He paused, then leaned forward, his voice growing louder, more passionate. "When a man can look another man in the eye and strip him of respect with a single word, we must not stay silent. We must stand together." Someone in the back shouted, "Preach it, Pastor," and the entire congregation rose to their feet, clapping, crying, and chanting, "Stand up, stand up, stand up." That moment was recorded and uploaded online. By midnight, the video hit 2.3 million views on YouTube. Within hours, similar sermons spread across the country, from Dallas to Detroit, from Los Angeles to New York. America's churches and communities had turned Obama's calm response into a nationwide movement about respect, unity, and dignity. Across the country, living room coffee shops and office break rooms buzzed with debate. For the first time in years, people from opposite sides of the political aisle found themselves agreeing on one thing. On a local radio station in Texas, a lifelong conservative named Bill Hartman called in. His voice was rough, hesitant. "Look, I've never been a fan of Obama, never voted for him. But I'll tell you this." He paused for a moment, then said firmly, "The man carried himself with dignity, and that matters." The host went silent for a beat before responding softly, "Bill, I think a lot of Americans feel the same today." In Cleveland, a retired factory worker, Linda Peterson, sat with her friends at a diner. She pushed her coffee mug aside and whispered, "I used to think he was just another politician, but the way he handled that," she shook her head slowly, her voice trembling slightly, "that took grace, real grace." Social media reflected the same shift. Even those who criticized Obama for years posted the same phrase over and over again. This isn't about politics anymore. This is about dignity. What started as a confrontation had sparked a moment of national reflection. People were beginning to see the power of restraint, humility, and respect values bigger than party lines. By the following morning, something extraordinary had happened. Across living rooms, newsrooms, schools, and churches, Americans were no longer talking about Trump's insult. They were talking about Obama's response. Cable networks replayed the clip on a loop, Obama standing calmly, hands folded, his voice measured and steady, saying, "Respect isn't demanded by a title, it's earned by how you treat people." People didn't just hear those words, they felt them. In a panel discussion on NBC, journalist Rachel Martinez summarized it perfectly. This wasn't about politics anymore. What America saw last night was the strength of restraint. True power doesn't scream, it speaks when it must. That single moment became a cultural reset. Parents discussed it at dinner tables. Teachers used it as a lesson in classrooms. Pastors wove it into sermons. Even some Trump supporters began to quietly admit a hard truth. Leadership isn't about dominance, it's about dignity. It was as if America had collectively taken a deep breath. For the first time in years, the nation paused to consider what real strength looks like and discovered that sometimes the loudest person in the room isn't the most powerful one. In the days that followed, political analysts, educators, and community leaders all agreed on one thing. Leadership was redefined that night. For years, America had been drowning in noise, shouting matches, on cable news, viral clips of insults, and endless political warfare. But Obama's calm, measured response stood out like a lighthouse in the storm. On PBS, historian Dr. Eleanor Grant explained it best. True leadership isn't about making people bow down to you. It's about inspiring them to stand with you. At Harvard, a leadership seminar used the confrontation as a case study. Professor Mark Reynolds asked his students, "What did we witness, power or dignity?" A student raised her hand, her voice trembling slightly. "Dignity, sir. Because when Obama spoke, he didn't speak at us, he spoke to us. He invited us to rise above the noise." Across social media, millions of people echoed the same sentiment. Leadership isn't about commanding fear. It's about commanding respect. This moment became more than a viral clip. It became a guidepost. Parents used it to teach their kids about grace. Teachers used it to discuss empathy. And even in workplaces, managers referred to it when talking about respect and accountability. America realized something profound. A true leader doesn't need to raise their voice to make an impact. Sometimes the most powerful thing a leader can do is stay composed when others lose control. As the noise faded and the headlines kept spinning, one truth rose above it all. Obama's words became more than just a reply to an insult. They became a lesson for a nation, a timeless reminder of what real leadership means. In his calm, steady voice, he left behind a message that would echo far beyond that Phoenix stage. When the world tells you to sit down, real strength is inviting others to stand up with you. It was simple, it was profound, and it was unforgettable. For millions, watching that line became a mirror, forcing America to ask itself, what kind of leaders do we truly want? Those who demand submission or those who inspire unity? And so the night ended not with anger, not with chaos, but with something far more powerful, a call to dignity, to respect, and to rise together. What this story teaches us is clear. True strength is not measured by how loud you can shout, but by how steady you can remain when tested. In life, there will always be voices trying to belittle you, dismiss you, or make you feel small. But dignity isn't something others can take away, it's something you carry within yourself. When you face disrespect, remember this: you don't have to respond with anger to win. You win when you rise above it, when you show grace under pressure, and when you prove that respect is earned, not demanded. That's the kind of strength that inspires others. That's the kind of leadership the world desperately needs today. If this story moved you, if it made you think about what leadership and dignity truly mean, then don't let it stop here. Hit subscribe to Mr. Exposed Stories and join us for more powerful, untold stories the mainstream media won't show you. Because the truth deserves to be heard, and together we'll keep standing up for it.